Wonderful morning, everyone. So this morning, I was actually traveling to Berlin this morning, getting up at 3 a.m. And normally what I'm doing in the morning is I have a morning run, you know. It's very important to get some physical activity up in the morning. So I want to make a quick questionnaire. Who of you in the audience did some sports in the morning? Please raise your hands. All right. Pooh. That's not a lot, actually. So here's a little experiment I want to do today. So I want to ask everyone to get up and do a brief workout with me. We're going to do 10 squats together, and we're going to track this with one of our apps. All right, guys, let's get some action going. All right, here's the app, starting now. All right, 10 squats, everyone. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. All right, guys, give yourself a big round of applause. Thank you. Well, if only, so I told you that's an app for Runtastic. Please download it. I know this sort of user acquisition probably won't scale, but nonetheless, I think it makes the world a healthier place, and that's what ultimately Runtastic is here for. Great. So, what I want to talk about is sustainable growth. Why am I talking about this? Ooh. Okay, we're done. So, growing numbers. Just to give you an overview, what Runtastic is currently doing. So, each and every day, we are adding additional 170,000 downloads per day. That's internationally. We're currently having 95 million registered users. And having 190 million total app downloads worldwide. How did we achieve that? That's what I want to talk about today, because 90% of what you're seeing here and 90% of what we've done so far is based off organic user acquisition. I wouldn't say it's necessarily this hockey stick expansion, but it's a steady and sustainable growth. And I want to talk and exemplify how did we achieve this. Now this is what you already know. Here we see the comparison of traditional marketing focusing on awareness and acquisition of a user compared to what growth and the whole growth funnel is taking care of. Now remark, what's super important for us is the whole data path. You know, data is informing all the decisions, all the processes and the whole team, what we are doing, how we are doing it, and how do we get better at this. Super important for us. Now, why are we even looking at growth? One and foremost, marketing simply is not marketing anymore, right? It's part of a holistic customer experience, which means it resembles a wide range of skills, starting at standard marketing processes, including business intelligence, including product management, but also engineering and partnerships. The user is ubiquitous. We know the user is on multiple platforms, visits multiple apps a year, so we have to make sure that we address the customer at the right time with the right message in the right channel. What that means, I come to that in a few slides. Also important in this age is the possibility for the whole team to have an end-to-end execution. This is super important for the quality of the team and the quality of work we are doing, right? So if you have one dedicated team working on a common goal, we all know that's how we're going to ensure high quality work, right? And last but not least, everything is about speed. You know that, especially in mobile, things change so fast, tactics change so fast, so time to execution and time to market is really crucial for the overall success. Hence, we're coming up with an interdisciplinary team. Hence, we're coming up with a growth team. Now, as an entry point, I want to briefly bring Runtastic's core values. So that's the overall company values you are seeing here. And I want to just give one brief example, the first one being a strong part of the Runtastic team, right? So our recent app launch, the Runtastic Results app. For that app, we had all of our 160 employees signed up for the 12-week training plan. And what we did is, not only we did the whole 12 weeks together, training for 3 times a week, but also we built a stronger team. Second, we built a better product because we ourselves were the beta testers. And 3, we now have a more fit company, right? So it's a triple win situation. Yeah? And also you just experienced it, you know? Doing something together really bonds in a common goal. Now, moving forward to the general setup, and that's the very core of my presentation today. It's about the setup. So if you want to do growth right, it can't be a simple strategy only. Much more, it has to be at the core of the culture and has to inform everything we do. So those principles inform the processes we're doing, and the processes informing the team, and the team then develops and adapts and further develops the tactics. So in other words, the growth culture is codified in a set of principles which I'm going to talk about. Being the best at getting better. For me personally, the most important one. Let that sit for a moment. It's not being the best or getting better, but it's really being the best at getting better, which extrapolates the learning and extrapolates the focus on learning, how to get better in learning, right? And the best part here, it overarches all of the other growth principles in here, because when we are better at learning, when we adapt faster, we are ultimately going to win, right? So the score, in other words, is taking care of itself. The second one, growth is never done. In other words, or if you wish, Google is exemplifying that as 10x thinking, right? So no matter where you start, and Runtastic started very small in a 200 people city in Linz, Upper Austria. By that time, when we started, we never thought we'd achieve 190 million app installs worldwide, right? So what we started off doing is we built local run tracks in parks or along a river. So we thought, well, we maybe reach 100,000 users, right? So it's really, growth is never done. Think big, think 10x, and really go for the big crowd and go for the big uplift. Third one, math and metrics don't lie, but they don't tell everything. I think at the core of every modern marketer is data-driven decisions, right? Super important, because then we can all go to the C-level and all show our superiors, well, that's what we did, that's what the results is, right? That's the uplift we are achieving, and that's the revenue we are achieving, that's great. But, you know, stay alert. I think a healthy portion of gut feeling is always very important to have, especially when building products. Plus, as a side note, we also know that some tracking tools and some implementations are not always right, so therefore be careful with the metrics. Fourth, pursue authentic growth, and that taps a bit into the difference between Europe and the US, probably. So we always had the approach of, you know, really focusing on retention. We're hearing this also in the morning over and over again. Focus on retention, focus on authentic growth, make sure the users stay in there and you have active users, and don't only go for growth in terms of downloads, right? They're meaningless at the end of the day. Last but not least, fifth growth principle, focus always wins. When we're looking at growth stacks, when we're looking at all the possibilities we have as marketers, it's very important to test out what works for you, what works for your product, and double down on this, you know? Make sure you identify your bottlenecks, make sure you remove those bottlenecks, and make sure to really work hard and stay focused on what works for you and your product. And learn to say no. This is very hard. We had to learn it the hard way, so we need to get better at this. Coming out of the principles, we're talking about process. So whenever we launch an app, we have to be clear what is our objective. The objective can either be we want to only focus on monthly active users, or we want to focus on actual monetization right away. Make sure you identify those. In our case, let's say that's monetization. Then second step, define the elements of growth and track them. For example, find out that, you know, in the first 7 days, that's the most important window to activate a user. That's where we want to track, that's where we want to measure the user. Third step, define a KPI around that first 7 days. Classical, a 7-day retention, for example. And then the fourth step is, of course, track that progress continuously. Write it down, because eventually 1 year after your launch, you're happy when you have all the tactics you did lined up and know which one works and which one did not work. Coming out of processes, we're going into the team. Now, this has been very high level for now, but what we're actually doing, we split up in 3 streams right now. One focusing on user acquisition. Here, of course, paid user acquisition a topic, but everything around organic user acquisition, ASO, super important for us. Plus, we're coordinating video production and translations in-house. Similar for CRM, campaign managers, CRM operations, in CRM, everything around push messaging, in-app messaging, and also email. And last but not least, sort of a service department, data. So it's engineers, analysts, and data scientists working closely with the other teams on constantly improving our work. Now we come to the tactics, and I know most of you burn for the tactics. They're most important and most precious to everyone. But again, before starting into our tactics, I want to remind you that tactics don't last forever. You know, for most cases and for most channels, they last for, let's say, half a year, and then all the mass and everyone else is jumping on those. What we want to do is, again, we create a culture to find those tactics, to explore those tactics, and constantly getting better at those tactics. Let's talk about reach. So we know there's a huge amount of apps in the app stores, right? So the question is, how can we cut through the noise? Yeah? So with our multi-app strategy, exemplified here, we made sure to have a very broad reach right from the beginning. So here we're seeing our focus on cardio, including hardware products. We're focusing on strength with some of our apps. We are focusing on daily habits with hardware and our apps. And we are tapping more into nutrition. So there's a reason why there's a question mark here. As a main driver in reach, it's been for us the multi-app strategy, as you see here, but also it's been our multi-language setup, both of which, especially for marketing and especially for product development, add a high level of complexity. So, and the only way to deal with complexity is, one, with automation, and second, with internalization of the value chain. So therefore, we have all development in-house, no external agencies, no external resources, whether in development or in translations. So that being super important for us. Moving on to the user journey, mostly done via our CRM part. So essentially simplified, how do we get the user from point A to point B? And that can be as simple as within the app experience itself, but also from a product experience, right? So how do we get the user from not running at all to running a half marathon, right? From a product perspective, or simply how do we get the user from a not signed in status or a logged out status to a logged in status, right? And here, just to exemplify our user journey map, which has been widely covered already. So this is really to activate the user as part of the results app, right? And to identify this activation path in the first couple of minutes and in the first couple of weeks, essentially, is most crucial, leading up to app retention, especially in health and fitness. Now, due to time, I need to jump through the slides a bit faster. So here we are talking again about the ubiquitous user and how within the CRM we are actually targeting different channels within one set of tools, still having one simplified view at our user, right? One brief example, because it's very funny, I want to share that. So one learning from CRM, I think it's been roughly 1 year ago, we've been implementing a new CRM, and we wanted to send out the push message, right? Our standard push messages are something along the line of, well, it's Sunday, it's a perfect day for running, go out for a run, right? So, and in this CRM test, our CRM manager was actually sending out the test message, testing if the push message is working. Turns out, the CRM manager is sending a test message, content to be defined, out to 400,000 Android users right away, right? And content of this message was simply banana, exclamation mark, right? And so we found out about it and we're like, oh my God, right? Like, okay, that's like worst case. This is going directly live out. Okay, so a couple of minutes later, it turns out we have a 10x increase in the push open rate than for any other push message we've ever sent out, right? So just by the curiosity of the user. Yeah? Plus, we've got replies on Facebook and on Twitter, like what's going on, Runtastic, are you having any problems, like what's with this banana thing, right? So on Facebook, our marketing managers directly turned this into, well, we just wanted to inquire about healthy recipes around bananas, right? Banana cookies or whatever. So creating there a loop. So that was really interesting. On Twitter, people were more sophisticated, as we know. They were then more talking about, well, you know, it's interesting because during the same period of time, in Despicable Me, not sure if you know the movies with the Minions, right? There's a short flick about, you know, Minions love bananas, right? So Twitter was going crazy about that part. So what am I say with this? You know, just keep testing and just be bold in what you're testing and send out intriguing messages. Your users will love it. This all happened by accident, just to remind you. All right, skipping through this, social integration. I think Dubsmash already covered this really well. The only part I want to say is, well, K meaning, of course, virality factor. So we've been integrating with Facebook early on the product level, knowing that health and fitness content is the third most shared content on Facebook. So that's why we also have been part of the newsfeed integration, of a health graph integration from Facebook. So really try to be as social as possible. A/B testing, just a quick stop by here. Initially, in our young eagerness, we really said we want to test everything. You know, that's what we do. That's how digital marketing works. Please don't. Please go back at the principles what we said. Keep your focus. Identify your bottlenecks first, and really identify what you actually need to A/B test. You know, that it very fast it can be too much to optimize. Resources are scattered all around the place, around the growth stack. So really focus on what you actually need to A/B test and optimize. For us, and that's why here is a thank you, Google. For us, it's really App Store optimization. We identified that as one of our most important bottlenecks. And here we are investing heavily time and resources to A/B test that part. Last but not least, I want to conclude with smart data. It's smart data by meaning and not big data. So as you can imagine, Runtastic has tons of data. The problem really was to, you know, how do we aggregate that data and how do we actually make sense and how do we build the team and the reports around that data. So in other words, we track, we have sensors out there, we feed them back in our product and services. How do we make sense of them in order to create a better user experience? At the end of the day, in sports as in business, it's not about progress. It's about progress and not perfection. So everyone needs to start somewhere and start making progress. Perfection comes later. With this, I want to thank you and also remind you guys, of course, we're hiring. As usual, please be in touch. Also, the rest of my team is here. Please feel free to approach us anytime. We're happy to share and we're happy to mingle and exchange on growth tactics. Thank you.